Howl's Moving Castle is a brilliant film that deals with many concepts such as aging, war, and love, while also keeping a lighter tone throughout with whimsical characters in a truly magical setting. For those of you wondering, I did watch the English dub of the movie with glorious voice acting from Gene Simmons as Old Sophie. This is also a spoiler review, so please, if you haven't seen the movie, do it. It is really good. Hayao Miyazaki was born in the year 1941 in the middle of World War II. In 1945, at only 4 years old, the city he lived in, Utsunomiya, was bombed by American forces. His family survived the event and evacuated to another city. Seeing the bombings had a lasting impact on Miyazaki, giving him hate towards wars and the atrocities that come with it. Later scenes in the film of Sophie's home city carry an extra weight to it if you know the director's history, how he actually lived through it. The war in the movie is started after the neighboring kingdom's prince goes missing, and it is blamed on Ingri. Miyazaki makes sure to treat war with complexity. Ingri isn't the good guys despite being the country we spend the movie in. Ingri actually has a pretty vile government. A government tracking down any witches or wizards for defying their word. A government that enlists the best magicians across the land and turns them into killing machines to further their own interests, and will punish those who run away from it. The neighboring country isn't discussed too much about, but it seems they are doing much the same thing. At one point in the movie, a warship floats over house fields of flowers. Sophie asks if it ours, and Hal responds with, "Does it matter?" Neither country is granted with moral high ground, for both are fighting this war and both drop bombs on civilians. This movie smartly takes away any glory usually given to war in film. It will make you question why wars are started if those on top even know what they are doing. This is exemplified when we meet the King of Ingri halfway through the film. He had been set up before. Sophie even tells Hal that the king would love to hear what his subjects want to say. Of course, when we meet the king, this doesn't seem to be true at all. At the start of the film, we overhear background characters say nobody wants a war. Clearly, the king has not been listening to his citizens, instead spreading propaganda. Propaganda about the traitorous witches and wizards, and propaganda about the war. After Sophie and Marco witness a sinking warship return to port, the streets get flooded by flyers of enemy propaganda, which an official promptly says not to collect the flyers because they are enemy propaganda. They are lies. Yet Ingri lied to their own citizens as well, even writing in the paper the war had been won, shortly before Sophie's hometown was bombed. The king is just a bumbling fool who seems to find the war fun. Meanwhile, it is Madame Solomon who takes the seat as the movie's main antagonist. A very evil lady you can tell because she resides in a greenhouse, which I just can't imagine because greenhouses are so hot and humid. No wonder she doesn't get up the whole movie. She's probably dying of heat exhaustion. Anyway, she holds the position as main antagonist, one for having a connection to Hal, but also being a very manipulative official using dirty tactics to secure Ingri's interests. This may come as a shock, or maybe a few of you had already had this all together, but I must say it, for it is what the director intended. The King of Ingri is George W. Bush, and Madame Solomon is Richard Cheney, George Bush's vice president, for those of you too young to remember. Miyazaki was vocal about his disagreement to American intervention in Iraq. Actually, the reason he didn't go to the American Academy Awards for Spirited Away was because of this, and the lies spread by the American government telling the world they held weapons of mass destruction, which, as any of you know, turned out not to be true. The public in the movie hold an unhealthy amount of patriotism and respect for the soldiers and the country. We see this clearly in the beginning as Sophie passes the parades of people cheering on Ingri's military and the flag being flown across the sky and pretty much everywhere. But as we see, not all the soldiers are kind, and just like with any war, the longer it goes on, the more the public's perception of it worsens. As the film goes, cities are empty as people try to escape the bombs. Diana Wynne Jones, the original author for the book, also lived through World War II. She lived in England at the time when it was evacuated to Wales. From what I have read, there is no war in the book. To the movie, she had to say, "It was wonderful. I don't think I've ever met anyone who thinks like I do. He saw my books from the inside out." Hearing this, I think the book and movie should definitely stand on their own grounds, and we shouldn't spend too much time comparing the two. And I might just be weird, but if I wanted the movie to be exactly like the book, then there's no point in watching a movie. Just read the book again, though I am very glad the author enjoyed the adaptation. Al is definitely something. He starts off the movie messy and decides life isn't worth living if he has the wrong hair color. He is pretty flamboyant, and that's shown in his character design. Started the movie with a pink overcoat and blonde hair. He is still a child at heart. Calcifer even says, when Howl's heart is returned, that it's still only the heart of a child. His room is filled with toys and his castle is disorganized to say the least, and like I just said, very self-conscious about his appearance. However, he has redeeming traits that Sophie can see. He truly is kind and he has a hatred towards war. Hal's character progression all happens because of Sophie. She cleans the entire house, which causes the hair dyes to be mixed up. This movie is filled with physical transformations. About every main character goes through one. Howl, the Witch of the Waste, the castle itself, the Scarecrow, and Sophie. After these physical changes, we then get to see character changes. Howl begins to mature and becomes willing to ask Sophie for assistance and to protect her from danger. He runs away from his responsibilities, making him a very relatable character to a lot of people. And he has to report to Madame Solomon at some point, or they will find him. It takes Sophie to give him the courage, and it takes Sophie to stop him from becoming a monster and getting impaled by Madame Solomon. Onwards from this point, he's constantly trying to give Sophie things like a place to stay and his flower garden, and her home and her hat shot back. Hal's character growth is also shown in his character design. He loses the pink overcoat, has darker black hair, black pants, and a white shirt. He matures and finds what truly is worth protecting, yet he still holds the problem of becoming a monster. If he keeps turning into one, someday he won't come back. A metaphor that no man ever comes back from war. So what keeps him from losing himself? Sophie, of course. He falls in love with her. He participates in the war only to keep her safe, greatly injuring himself in the process, but he continues because he must keep her and the others safe. Personifying, a man fights not because he hates who is in front of him, but loves who is behind him. At the end of the film, Howl is given his heart again. He says it feels like there's a sudden weight on his chest. Having a heart carries a lot with it, but it saves Howl from becoming a monster, and releasing Calcifer, of course. You need a heart. You can't just throw emotions away. Sure, you will feel the pain and sadness that comes with it, but it comes with everything else, relationships, happiness, and joy, and of course, love. However, all these things come with being a person, making you who you are. Hate and love, pain and joy are all parts of a full life, and who you are is what you do with it. Do you further your own interests and not care, or help those and care for those around you? At the end, when Madame Solomon sees Howl with his heart back, perhaps she remembers that she never actually lost hers and decides to end the war. Of course, with the prince being found, everything fell right into place. Sophie is an incredibly likable character. She's definitely one of my favorite Ghibli characters. She goes through quite a lot in this film, being harassed by soldiers, carried into the sky by a wizard, turned into a 90-year-old lady, then trying to save Howl from the war, destroying the castle in the process, and throwing a bucket of cold water on Calcifer. Quick side note, but if you're ever watching a story and a character repeatedly says they're going to do something, even just sarcastically, chances are that they will probably do it, like how Sophie threatened Calcifer with a bucket of cold water. Anyway, it's safe to say Sophie had quite the journey from her dull, repetitive life, and then ending up into an exciting, magical world. To start the movie, Sophie works at a hat shop near a railway. She makes complicated and striking hats, yet the one she wears is very simple. She doesn't seek attention. She is quiet, shy, and not sure of herself. She is then put under a spell by the Witch of the Waste and becomes an elderly woman. An interesting decision on Miyazaki's part to make a movie with an elderly lady as the main character. Yet it all works so well. I mean, this is one of my favorite movies. Anyway, after this transformation, we see change in her character as she hikes through the waste and meets the residents of the castle. She's a little more talkative and has some attitude. She also changes age. As she becomes more confident, she becomes younger. When she is happy and in love, she becomes younger, but then reverts to her old age when these moments are over and she has lost confidence in herself.
Please, Howl, I know I can be of help to you, even though I'm not pretty. All I'm good at is cleaning.
Well, the nice thing about being old is you got nothing much to lose.
The movie teaches us that aging is a beautiful process. I mean, we all get the chance to be young, but not all of us get the chance to be old. She gets a whole new outlook on life, able to enjoy all of it, even the quiet moments. The movie teaches us that youth comes from the heart. Sophie is only old when she acts old. This is where the theory comes in that Sophie is a witch herself and doesn't know, because she is going in between old and young. It's even slightly implied when Markle asks if she is sure she isn't a witch. In the book, Sophie actually is a witch, but in the movie, I can't say it would make a difference either way, so that is probably why it was never confirmed that she is a witch. One of my favorite sequences in the movie is visiting Madame Solomon. Miyazaki doesn't make his films comedies where there's a joke every 30 seconds. However, Howl's Moving Castle has to be one of his funniest films he has ever directed. The whole situation of Sophie thinking Heen is Howl and the Witch of the Waste having to walk up the stairs, and poor Sophie carrying the dog all the way up and the Witch of the Waste being a bit unfit. The whole time they bicker at each other about the spell on Sophie. Once Sophie reaches the top, she encourages the witch to make it. Once they get to the room, the witch runs to the only chair, and Heen leads Sophie away to Madame Solomon at the greenhouse. The use of color in this film is striking. Madame Solomon resides in a very pretty greenhouse surrounded by green, a more peaceful and inviting color, while her dress is red, a color usually associated with war and bloodshed. The movie's use of color makes you feel the coldness and peacefulness of the incredible landscapes and the sweltering heat of burning buildings. Anyway, Madame Solomon greets Sophie and they begin their discussion. Sophie tries to lie that Howl is much too much of a coward to come, but Madame Solomon tells Sophie Howl is heartless, and Sophie comes to his defense. She stands up straighter and turns younger, and I just have to compliment how expressive the animation is. Right there in Sophie's eyes you can see she has realized that she is in love with Howl. Unluckily for her, so has Madame Solomon, and there is no going back. Howl then arrives disguised as a king to make some complaints towards Madame Solomon about how only the capital is protected while the civilians aren't. Then the real king enters the room and they all just have to sit there awkwardly, all knowing that Sophie isn't Howl's mother and Howl is disguised as the king, until the king leaves and they can resume their discussion. We get to experience even more incredible moments as Solomon uses her magic on Howl. It all just gets so abstract and creative until Sophie saves Howl and they manage to escape with the Witch of the Waste and Heen by their side. We get a fun chase scene through the sky, and eventually Sophie, the Witch of the Waste, and Heen make it back to the castle. The Witch of the Waste transformation may be confusing at first, but is actually very consistent with how Miyazaki constructs a film. Usually there's a secondary antagonist introduced at some point throughout the movie, but they are never evil because they chose to be, so what society around them made them. Like the pirates in Castle in the Sky or No-Face, who is corrupted by the greedy occupants of the bathhouse. Now, out of all these secondary antagonists that become supporting characters, the Witch of the Waste probably starts out as the most evil, but really mellows out after she is turned elderly. However, even up to the climax, she still wants Howl's heart, which she finally discovers is in Calcifer, but at the end of the movie, seeing how Sophie has treated her so kindly even after what she has done to her, the witch just can't stay evil. Sophie responded to seeing the Witch of the Waste losing her powers with disgust towards the people who did it, instead of feeling joy that the witch received the same punishment she did. At the end, Sophie just tries being good and insisting to gain the heart back, hugging the Witch of the Waste, and at last she agrees and hands her the heart. Sophie shows considerable compassion and empathy to the characters in the film, and feels so much guilt in trying to save the Witch of the Waste and almost smothering Calcifer with cold water. She makes up for it though, returning Howl's heart and freeing Calcifer. I do love that Calcifer comes back because he likes them. I love every small detail in this movie, like how Sophie remembers that Calcifer enjoys positive encouragement and uses that for the film's climax, and I think we should go back to character design. During this scene, Sophie cuts off her braid. Symbolically, she has freed herself from all her insecurities. Her hair never returns to brown when she breaks the spell, but she accepts it as beautiful. At the last seconds of the movie, she is wearing a yellow dress. She is much more youthful and sure of herself, and the character design showed this transformation beautifully.
Sophie, your hair looks just like starlight. It's beautiful.
You think so? So do I!
Okay, I cannot review this movie without talking about one of my favorite characters, the Scarecrow. I just enjoy so much how helpful he is to Sophie and the rest of the castle's inhabitants. When he brings the umbrella to Sophie, it is such a sweet moment. Then to top it all off, the movie ends with an excellent twist. Alright, I know I said earlier this is a spoiler review, and I know some of you probably ignored that, but I'm telling you now, it is way more fun to watch the movie and have this part revealed to you then. Here's the timestamp to avoid the spoilers. It will also be in the pinned comment. Alright, back to where we were. To top it all off, the Scarecrow uses his body to save the characters. In the process, he breaks himself in half. Sophie holds him and thanks him for everything and kisses him. Suddenly, the Scarecrow transforms into a human, none other than the neighboring kingdom's missing prince. I was very shocked the first time I saw this, but I enjoy it so much every time. It's just so funny that the prince was with them the whole time and no one knew. The Witch of the Way states that she knows that spell, and it can only be broken by a kiss from one's true love. Unfortunately for the prince, she has already found someone else she would rather be with. Being the gentleman he is, the prince states that the heart can move on. He cheerfully says his goodbyes and makes his way home. I just loved every moment of this ending. I think this movie is one of Miyazaki's most underrated films. Some people are possibly just put off by the amount of peculiar events that happen all the way throughout this film. Fires talk, the castle has a face, there's a constant war going on, there's even a time travel portion. So, what is going on here? First, we should understand what techniques Miyazaki is using. Howl's moving castle, just like Spirited Away and a lot of his other films, take a soft world-building approach, meaning concrete rules are never set and the world is explained almost entirely through visuals. The method of writing is very useful for avoiding long speeches of exposition and allows the world to be flexible, meaning if Miyazaki wanted to add anything crazy halfway through the film, he could do it and no one would question it because it wouldn't break any established rules, for there are none. It is also great for creating magical worlds where lack of explanation makes the world even more intriguing and fun. Secondly, this is a character-driven story. Everything, every event is tied back to the characters. Howl saves Sophie from soldiers, however he's being followed by the Witch of the Waste men. Howl tries to lead them away and seems to be successful, but then the Witch of the Waste shows up to Sophie's hat shop. The worst part being Sophie has no idea why the witch is there and she punishes Sophie. Put simply, the witch feared Sophie would take Howl's heart. But why was Howl there in the first place? Because Sophie told him to, asking him to find her in the future. Howl even says he's been looking for her. You can even see that his ring is lighting up when he puts his hand on Sophie's shoulder. This film's ending is probably my favorite out of almost any movie. Everything is wrapped up and the characters are allowed to each live their own life. The shot of the warships heading home and then the pan up to the castle is amazing. Was Miyazaki ever seen his own movie here? Castle in the Sky? With the castle flying? Anyway. The ending of this movie is accompanied by a beautiful song called Promise of the World. That is another thing I like about this movie. Its soundtrack is amazing. In my opinion, is one of Joe Hishihashi's best, up there with Spirited Away. I love every sound effect in this movie, and I can watch Calcifer eat eggshells for hours. Love is a vital message in this movie. Unlike other movies, Howl's moving castle actually sticks with its theme at the end of the movie. Love is what breaks all the spells on everyone. Love is what ends the war. Love and the relationships the characters have is what makes them happy at the end. It's what makes the ending of this movie so satisfying. Love is important. The designs of the castle and the warships and the characters are all perfect. Every flying machine is so creative, and every frame of the movie feels like there's so much love in it. From the detailed backgrounds and expressive characters, the warships are threatening, and we have come to love the landscape so much that seeing a warship fly over it makes us feel scared. As I stated earlier, I believe this movie is underrated. It is an excellent work of storytelling, and in my opinion, one of the best animated films of all time. The characters are all sweet and enjoyable, the plot is absolutely fun, the magic will keep you intrigued, so will the castle itself, for it is a character as well in its own right. The animation is spectacular and colorful, and the messages are something a lot of us need to hear. Well, that's all I got for today's video. As always, thanks for watching.